Taylor and everybody, Kyle and Cheryl, you realize that at the moment, one of the most important sporting event for the world, in particular for Europe, is on right now. I mean,
Yeah.
England is playing against Croatia.
Yeah.
The first half actually went to 0-0 draw. And, normally, tech people love football. By the way, just want to mention
There's a
that.
reason why we're all here.
Yeah.
At least why I'm here.
So,
can mul-
sadly, I'm also here.
can multitask. That's the beauty of
Yes, yes, we
Clubhouse.
can watch the score at the same
Yeah.
time.
And then yesterday we met, and again, it's an unofficial Saturday gathering. It was one of the best gatherings we ever had, and it got up to 900 folks, and we went for 4.5 hours. So it just keeps getting better and better. And so this week, the past week, because we've been doing this for about a little over 3 months, 4 months now. This past week was actually one of the best weeks we've ever had, and there was so much news that happened each day that I thought it would be fun to circle back and just reflect on everything that I know. This sounds crazy, but like so much happened in the past 7 days that it's almost worth reflecting on and seeing if some of these bigger stories over the past week or two fit together in ways that we didn't, I love using this jigsaw puzzle metaphor because these little pieces snap together and form bigger chunks. And then these bigger chunks fit together in unobvious ways. And of course, there's new headlines today, like there always is. But I just wanted to thoroughly go back and do a reassessment of the stuff that's been coming fast and furious over the past few days. We can start, of course, as always, by I'll do some quick headlines that are on that are breaking. But I thought we could go through the people on stage and anyone in the audience who just to share whatever they thought was the biggest story of the week. Because there was a whole bunch of them, and I imagine it could be different for everybody because there were so many of them. And of course, we started the week on Monday with the fantastic Apple annual live stream keynote with the CEO Tim Cook sharing the vision for where Apple's going for the next year or such, and highlighting, just dropping bombs. They had their own 2-hour event live stream. We were gathered here just as we are right now, listening to watching the live stream together. And that was a jam-packed 2 hours. I mean, there was not 10 seconds of if you were to rewatch it again, you couldn't cut out 10 seconds of that thing. And it would take us more than 2 hours to mention everything they showed in that 2 hours, just to highlight just how information dense and how rich it was, full of fantastic features and everything. And I think people are already starting to download the new versions of all the new operating systems, because essentially they released the new operating system for the watch, the phone, the laptops, the TV, and whatever other devices I'm not thinking of. I mean, they're unifying all of the operating systems now finally, which, by the way, I predicted about an hour before the event that would be one of the big reveals this year, was that they're finally got all of these operating systems working seamlessly with each other, both visually and functionally. And boy, that prediction came true. Those and that's quite a feat, actually, to get everything working perfectly synergized across all the devices. And yeah, so that we started the week with that, and then where we are today on a Sunday, there's a couple of big headlines that I'll jump into right away. One of the first is from the Financial Times, and luckily we have Kai on stage, who's knows a thing or two about China, and it was kind of a big. China was quite mentioned quite a lot in the news this week, and this article that just came in from the Financial Times is kind of interesting, and I want to take advantage of having some Chinese friends on stage to help us confirm what this headline is suggesting. It says, a new generation of young workers at China's technology giants is demanding an end to harsh working conditions and the 996 work culture. And what the 99 work culture means for those outside of China is, I believe it was Jack Ma.
996, China.
I'm sorry.
996.
Yeah,
996.
Yes, Cheryl. Thank you. 996. And what 996 means, I believe it was Jack Ma who popularized it that they work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. So 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And no doubt that seems unsustainable, although they've been doing it for many years now. But the report from the Financial Times is that now people are pushing back on this. They want to, and by the way, similarly in the U.S., we saw headlines this week of Apple's Tim Cook wrote a letter telling everyone to plan to come back to the office starting in September, where they would come back for 3 days a week. Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Wednesdays and Fridays were optional. You could work from home if you choose. And there was apparently even some pushback from the American Apple team members on that. So this is not a Chinese issue by any means, but I thought it was interesting because China is renowned for this, fast and furious work ethic and this 996 work culture. But I was actually kind of surprised. I wasn't surprised to see Americans not wanting to go back to the office and telling their bosses we're not ready to go back yet. But I was hoping that our Chinese friends could add some color, some context, some insight, perspective to the pushback from a new generation of young workers at Chinese tech giants demanding an end to the harsh working conditions and the 996 work culture. Kai, any thoughts on that, or anyone else we should invite to comment?
Well, I generally think that 996 is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful lifestyle, to be honest. I mean, I work 18 to 20 hours a day. When you're talking about that, I often have Clubhouse, like I quite often sleep with Clubhouse, and the next morning, 4 hours later, because of all this blocked nose as a result of hay fever, I wake up and the Clubhouse still shouting. But anyway, to be serious, I think there are two kind of people. The one is entrepreneur, as well as the people who really want things to happen. And for those people, I think 996 or anything just not enough, and people will look for whatever opportunities to actually get ahead and at the expense of health and family life and romance and football and golf and good food. But on the other hand, you get people who establish themselves and once the basic human pattern is that once you're able to feel the basic need, you're looking for something higher, and you will find that in order to be in better state of mind and state of health, and you want to actually have a more healthy lifestyle and kind of like be more in tune with some great things happening in life. So I think just different stages in life. I think what you will find is that in Europe, you have lots of people actually more in the second category, and in China, and lots of people in the first category, and in the US somewhere in between. So I'm not worried about 996. I think gradually people and society and communities and company, they reach equilibrium to itself. So I think whatever you observe from China and from India is at this particular stage in time, and what I think human beings is essentially the same. Once you establish a beauty of material, basic material wealth, you are going to look for other things, and so I am sadly still on the ladder. Hopefully that's an encouragement for everybody
Kai,
else.
just to be specific on that, just a little bit of question. Are the dynamics different in a growing, hungry, kind of fairly competitive for the young people kind of country or place in China? From my experience when I was working there is, people had a sense, and this was about 10 years ago when I was on the ground there a little bit with our business. There was this kind of sense that we're going to miss out on the future. We have to work 24 hours from the individuals and particularly the younger people, and then the pressure on them as well from their peer group and the companies. So there was a sense that was, it's not all the same all around the world. There are nuances and differences, right? And just wondering in China, are those some of those dynamics changing, moving around? Are they the same?
Well, I mean, as you're a cow, you're super intelligent. I mean, you already partly answered the question that you're asking. What you have in China is basically you grade the society. Number one, you cut it through by 70s, 80s, early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, late 90s, and now the millennials. And you will find that the millennials are very interesting because they're typically result of one-child policy. And in bigger cities, these guys are born with 4 or 5 houses to their name, and they effectively have a personal wealth of 20 million RMB or at least $3 million to their belt, so they don't have to work hard. So they have chance to actually request for more respect. And while you have the older generation who is used to actually fight from a position of disadvantage. And the second is geographical cut. I mean, in China, I mean, the super cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Hangzhou nowadays, and to a certain extent, Nanjing joining that fold, and Chengdu joining that fold. I mean, the people in these cities, especially the working class, are very different from the third tertiary city and there's like bottom level cities. And so the spread in China is immense. And 60% of Chinese workforce still have very low salary, while the kind of like top of the range, they are more developed than London. Their spending power is much more than London or possibly Tokyo, to that matter. So I think at the moment China have this really kind of like extreme in terms of the difference between people. So this is actually one of the issues that has to be addressed, and but it's not easy. And I think all the countries are trying to address this, but nobody have a particularly good format. It needs an integrated effort from education, from philanthropy, from social engineering, from good governance, and from internationalization. And there are lots of issues. And but I think what you generally find is that China was split into different parts of China, and they're just very different. And you will find the people moving between this in search of whatever best for them. But in super cities like Beijing, Shanghai, you basically get and Shenzhen, you get a bunch of crazy entrepreneurs. They're different, they're super different, and these people, a large percentage of these people, will be in driving seat of Chinese economy, if not internationally, regional economy, within the next 3 to 5 years. And then the rest of China, it will catch up and will adapt. And you also see a big resurgence of traditional culture, renaissance of traditional culture. Traditional Chinese culture, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is really beautiful. You basically drink tea, you listen to slow traditional music, you engage in dancing, you draw a picture. I mean, that is super comfortable and cliche life. But the other side of Chinese life is when you get in Foxconn factory, you just work. And it's quite interesting. I think it's a great. I think we all should actually observe what's happening in China, and this to a certain extent is happening like 5 or 10 years later in countries like Vietnam and in different regions of Malaysia, Indonesia, and possibly Africa. So anyway, and in the meantime, China is actually competing head on with against US and Europe in terms of creative economy. So in fact, I'm currently advising quite a few UK and Australia and Canadian startups to go to China to set it up because the market is big. So we have a tremendously complicated, exciting social and cultural melting pot currently happening in China, in Chinese diaspora, and also in the entire East Asia region. Really worth joining. And I think, yes, I certainly would come to this room often. And I think Taylor and Carl, you're wonderful moderators, and Cheryl, you know a lot. And yeah, together let's make the observation, and let's join
Yeah,
in
but
this
Kai,
movement.
can I ask you a question? Because you mentioned that you're now helping many countries to go into China, but recently China has just passed anti-sanctions laws that actually allows them to have a lot of power over the foreign companies in China, including the data. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's very natural, to be honest, and I don't think. Well, I certainly don't have evidence. I'm a British. I don't have evidence that the Chinese government is using this against British companies or international companies as such. Of course, I understand people's concern, but of course, Apple is working in China quite happily, and so you can ask the same question to Apple, and certainly we are very happy to share our data because we provide content. That is, I mean, malscience.com. I think people, obviously, you could choose, like Google, you could choose to completely sit out of what's happening in China, or you could be similar to Apple and Lenovo to really to be fully engaged of what's happening in China, or you could be a Microsoft, you observe, but you engage in the testing water. I think time will tell which one would yield most in the great global economy, because you want to make sure that you set up your corporate social and data and privacy policy so that you'll be well accepted in the US and Europe as well. There's no simple answer on that, Cheryl, but I think my general attitude is that I would embrace opportunity in China, and I would tell the Chinese local government and central government of my concern, and I expect them to actually answer these concerns so that I can grow my partnership with China. But of course, other people like perhaps Justin would hold a different view, but I think this is all to be respected. I mean, that's why we have this forum, so that everybody is free to express our opinion. And I hope I kind of answered your
Yep.
question, Cheryl.
Yeah, that was great. Is it Jeff? Is it you? Yeah, Jeff, welcome to the stage. I saw you had your hand up, and I guess it's relevant to your bio, which I'll just quickly share with the audience. As a American business trade president in Taiwan, doing exports from Greater China, American residing in Taiwan for over 2 decades, much knowledge of China-Taiwan business coaching. So you had your hand up. I guess it was relevant to the conversation we're having.
Well, actually, yesterday was probably a little bit more relative, but there were so many people in the room. Basically, I just want to let everybody know here that if you have any questions regarding about Taiwan business, semiconductor industry, politics, things like that, you're free to ask me, whatever you want. I've been here for 2 decades, and I think I'm fairly well up to speed on a lot of the stuff that's going on here. So that's kind of what I wanted to chime in on, and everybody's welcome to ask me. I'm Jeff, and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Are people post? Well, you guys didn't really have COVID until relatively recently, and I think if there was an Olympics for I mean, the Olympics were canceled because of COVID, and if COVID itself was in some way a sort of replacement for the Olympics, and I don't think there ever was a better way to measure, get a real sense of how well each country is really doing than COVID. And Taiwan certainly came in the gold or silver globally for their response to COVID. But now that the end, not the end, but kind of we're over the hump, as we might say, with COVID. Do you, this headline that we were touching on about people going back to work, and people are starting, now that we're over the hump and people are looking forward to returning to somewhat of a life of normalcy again, do you think people are reluctant to go back to the same pace that we had pre-COVID in Taiwan specifically?
Well, right now everybody's kind of staying at home. We started having a breakout here because some pilots and some sex.
Yeah.
How to say that? I think you guys have read the news, so you understand
Yeah.
kind of what's going on and how it started. Right now, a lot of companies they're basically they're forced to work at home unless you're absolutely needed. And a lot of companies just were not prepared for it. And this is something that's kind of irritated a lot of people here, is that the government seems actually didn't do anything to prepare for this. And they made everybody think they did, but they didn't. And the companies, they're following government, and they didn't prepare. They had a year to do something, and they didn't. Now, some companies like big tech companies, Google and Dell and these international companies and stuff like that, they were starting to work at home probably last February, March, April, when we first started having cases here. And those companies are, they're more integrated into the system. And a lot of those people that I've talked to, there's half and half. There's a lot of people who want to go back to the office because they feel they're more efficient, especially in banking. They're more efficient in the office. They don't have to call. They don't have to spend so much time on the phone and stuff like that. But then there's the other side that they prefer to work at home. They can be with their kids. They can do whatever they want. But a lot of people are kind of they have mixed feelings about a lot of this right now, and we don't know how long this is going to go on. My estimate is sometime probably to the end of the year, because we cannot get vaccines, and China plays a role in that. It's it's a tug of war between the U.S. and China, so it's anybody's guess whether they're waiting for local vaccines to be produced and
Developed,
all
yeah.
this kind of stuff we don't know, right?
Yeah.
And there's two big companies right now that are doing it, but I think a lot of people are going to want to go back to the office.
Okay.
In Asia especially,
Well, I ask because
people
there's
work.
yeah, I exactly the point. Yeah, people work double. The people outside of Asia don't know, like
Yep,
it's double time over
yep,
there, and it's
yep,
part
yep,
of part of the appeal of it actually for a lot of people is the pace, right? So
yep.
and the results speak for itself. I mean, the rate and the speed of development over there really. I mean, you just look at the skyline and look at Shenzhen. Holy shit! You want to blow your mind? Watch a time lapse of Shenzhen over the past 20 years. It's just
Yep.
it seems impossible, and it borders on impossible. So anyway, the reason I ask is because there's a journalist named Unita Ong, sorry, Cheryl Tay, who writes for Insider in the Asia Bureau, and this article went a little bit viral where she says that some Chinese youth have had enough of the rat race. The solution, laying down, they call it, or lie flat, which is obviously some English version of Mandarin for the lie flat. And she says she interviewed several youths, most of them based in Shanghai, about why they've chosen to quote unquote lie flat instead of joining their peers pulling 996 working hours. And I'm wondering if that phrase or if that sentiment is in Taiwan as well, or is it just is it a journalist trying to make a story that isn't actual real? Which, by the way, that happens where you get journalists trying to create kind of narrative memes. I mean, everyone knows the viralness of visual memes, of course, kind of graphic memes, but from time to time you get journalists trying to create stories into memes that aren't actual real cultural shifts. It's a group of small people doing something, and they start fanning the flames on it. And I'm just trying to get a sense for if this is actually a cultural shift starting, as she's saying, or is it a tech journalist just trying to make a headline that isn't legitimately a cultural shift?
Jeff again.
Yeah.
I think it's possible to have this kind of thing happen in China. With the communist regime, they can basically tell you what they're going to do, and they're going to do it. But in Taiwan, I have not heard anything about that at all. I mean, the hours that people work here are just incredibly nuts. And it filters over to we foreigners too. It's we end up staying up late and stuff like that. But no, I haven't heard anything about a lower work hour or anything like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in China, yeah, I would say that it's very possible that they can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I help,
Yeah,
Taylor?
Kai. Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
Actually, I just want to bring the culture background into this.
Okay.
This is actually unique to Chinese culture. It's actually a way of satire, to be honest. Is that you suddenly see the kind of like appearance of this kind of term, and it's almost like rap music. Yeah, it's people just want to take a piss, and without touching the sensitive waters or stones politically. And in terms of the kind of phenomenon, actually in Japan and Taiwan, there is another term called, if I translate directly from Chinese, like eating the old. So it's basically a lot of young people, you find that they can't find job, and they kind of like become kind of like a negative cycle into their self-isolated lifestyle. So eventually parents are looking after them. They stop trying, basically. And and it does happen to a certain degree in Taiwan and Japan. And there's also a satire term called the months. So the monthly poll, basically. So at the end of the month, you spend everything. You forget about saving, forget about long-term goal, and you just enjoy your salary. And who cares? I mean, just like eat and drink whatever you can. And yeah, but before the end of the month, you spend all your money, and you have to wait for the salary next month. So yeah, forget about entrepreneurship and forget about financial plan, financial investment. So there's lots of terms like that. But in essence, I wouldn't read too much into it. I can tell you that as a Chinese, and I talk every day with people in China. The
Okay.
people are trying very, very
Okay. Good.
hard, and it's almost like a satire.
Yeah.
I appreciate this, but now you might be the perfect person to ask about this next headline that's just broke. China military uses AI to track rapidly increasing UFOs, and this was one of the big stories in the past week or so. That in America, the main the biggest American news outlet, 60 Minutes, did this big piece about how the Navy officials have seen UFOs now daily for years, and that today it was reported that officials are in the Department of Defense are now claiming that these UFOs have even turned off nuclear launch capabilities and turned on when they were off. It turned on and off the nuclear launch capabilities, and all that on top of there's a new congressional report that is now happening where the government itself is saying we can say for certain on the records this is not American technology. We're not saying we don't know what it is. We're not claiming to know what it is, but we do know it's not American technology because we don't have any technology that can do anything like this. And then
And
that leaves 1 second, Chris. That leaves Russia and China. And then it seems very unlikely that it's Russia, and that leaves China. And then on the question of China, they're reporting that they've been seeing these things very regularly for decades. And China, of course, is very advanced technologically today, but was not 30 years ago, or especially 40 years ago. So but these things were being reported, but going back 30, 40 years now, according to these reports, which means it's probably not China because they didn't have that technology 34 years ago. And the technology that they are, you know, Ericsson or Nortel. There's a lot of claims that China, takes a lot of technologies from a lot of 5G from other partners, whatever. Well, if China has technology related to these UFOs, well, they wouldn't be trying to take intellectual property around 5G if they've got fucking UFOs, now would they? So it's probably not China. It's probably not Russia. The USA is saying it's not us. So what the fuck are these things? So, but
and it's really
the,
funny because
the,
they're being very concise. They're also saying that it's not
Mm.
extraterrestrial. So I guess maybe under the sea.
I'm just like smiling that people always go to that very polarized view that the world is either US or Russia or China. I mean, come on, you're forgetting that the United Kingdom still exists. I mean, we still have a
yeah,
lot of
and
clever
I don't,
minds here. I mean,
I mean
Sweden, full of like really
no
clever people.
disrespect
The
to,
US,
yeah, no
UK is not
disrespect
there.
to our Israeli friends. I mean, we could include Israel as well, perhaps. But the headline from the South China Morning Post, very reputable paper, said perhaps one of the most reputable papers in the region. China military uses AI to track rapidly increasing UFOs, that's intelligent. Let's use AIs to track these things. It says, to the People's Liberation Army, they are unidentified air conditions, quote unquote, and artificial intelligence is the best way to keep up with them. Chinese researchers confirm that sighting reports from across the country are on the rise, but aliens are unlikely to be responsible. And to Chris's point, there also is now more consistent reports that these things have the ability to go from underwater to air to space, all three, which, by the way, we don't have any crafts that can do all three of those things. We have a few crafts that can do underwater and air, and it's not a very good boat and it's not a very good plane. It's kind of a really bad hybrid of the two. And then we have things that can do air and space. But normally you make things that are specialized for one of the three. But these things apparently can go from water to air, no problem. And then from air to space, no problem. And I'm just saying, it's a little strange. And I'm wondering if you've been talking to your friends in China, what are they saying about using AIs to track UFOs in China?
Okay, so first of all, I will say that sorry, that was my son flushing the toilet. I mean the bathtub, by the way. And right, anyway, so first of all, AI is being used everywhere. I mean, we use AI every day in shopping, in survey internet, and being tracked by Google and Facebook all the time. So anybody is using big data can glorify it as being using AI. So that's the first point. Second point is that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, China has become a very prolific country with science fiction. By the way, there's a gentleman called Liu Cizhen. I actually knows about him. I mean, he got this novel called Santi. Apparently, Obama is a big fan of Santi. So three bodies basically, and so I think the the what's the word? The competency of science fiction clearly has, in my humble opinion, kind of influenced a lot of journalists, especially the ones of South China South China Channel. I think the craft who can kind of like go from land to air to sea, for me, just like defies physics defies quantum mechanics, and hey, I love to find out what it is. But at the moment, I'll say, what a fantastic piece of science fiction, and it doesn't hurt to have some romantic feeling about technology and what's possible, and so that's what keeps us going through a dull day. Otherwise, and save us from a 0-0 draw football match.
Yeah. Anyone, Chris? What you had another point to make? If I cut you off, or anyone else, feel free to jump in on. But yeah, keep going. And then BB, if you're in the audience, you want to share this DM you sent me, that'd be helpful. But anyone else want to jump in on these Chinese UFOs? Going once, going twice. No one's taking the Chinese UFO one. And BB, if you're, someone sent me a DM about the lying flat, the Chinese uh, cultural phenomena, and she's in the DM says this is a thing happening in China, and sent me a link on the Wikipedia in China has a page about it, although there's not an English version about it yet. And she says it's happening among the young people in China for real. Oh, here's BB. Here, she's got her hands raised. Here we go. Welcome, BB. Are you able to get on stage here? There you are.
I'm doing my jogging here. So. Okay. Um, for the young generation in China, because of the economics, we said that 躺平主义, that's lying flat, like you said previous. So we we joke, it's like some grass. So if you grow higher, the CCP will cut you first from the top. So if you lie down and you don't resist the system, so you just fulfill some little blessings like the after you,
I got it.
yeah.
I,
So the content is about not to buy a house, not to buy a car, not to get married, not to have a baby, and don't consume luxury things, and maintain the lowest life standard and refuse to be a machine that make money for others and refuse to become a slave. That's in the inside for this
So
lying part.
in
Yeah.
other words, it's like to keep very low under the radar.
Yes. Yeah. Cheryl, you
Laying
very
low.
yeah,
yeah.
laying low. Yeah. In
Well,
English,
that
I
is
think.
fascinating, BB.
Because he made all the money in drug dealing. I'm just joking.
Yeah, so that's why they said that. And like even some youngsters make a song, like a flag song, national song of the lying down, but it's in Chinese. But I can send you the link afterward, like Tyler. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
that's it.
Okay.
That's
So
it.
send me the
MVP.
song. Yeah. But thank you for the additional cultural context. Now it started to make sense. It's
I would
more.
really like that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more. I'd like to learn more about that.
Well, come to
But
Thailand. Come to
don't just
hell. Come to Thailand, where
sorry.
we've been laying low long. It's not a new thing here. People have been laying low for a very long time here in Thailand.
I
The term
personally
is
have this
在呀
sentiment.
呀 in Thai.
Mhm.
But I think Tyler, that's your, you are not forced to lay down. But I think the young generation lay on fail. There's no way out.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you go overseas to get like another country's nationality. Otherwise, if you stay in China, you are forced to lay low, or you try to be the highest top among the highest top. Otherwise,
Right.
the
So
yeah,
here,
it's the end of
let me
society.
ask you this, BB. Is it in some way in any way a response to Jack Ma, for example, who was kind of the superstar that a lot of the booming tech companies all around China, he was kind of idolized, and Jack Ma was really looked up to, and kind of like the Elon Musk
Yes,
of
yes,
China.
yeah,
And then after Jack Ma with the IPO issues and financial and all of this, and now he's he himself is laying low, and as you say, lying down or lying flat. And now it's kind of created a new approach of like, you know what, we don't necessarily want to be the next Jack Ma anymore, or the Pinduoduo founder who also stepped down, or the TikTok ByteDance founder who also stepped down. And now the whole new approach is actually we're not going to interested in being creating Alibabas anymore. We're just actually going to lay low or lie flat and just keep our head down and lay low. And that's kind of the new ethos, as we call it, the new.
It's a satire. It's a satire. It is
Okay.
that the satire is that if you're a person, don't be too famous. If
Uh
you're
huh.
a pig, don't be too big. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
bird, don't sing first.
Mm.
But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
it's satire. Yeah.
Yeah, there's different countries that have had different versions of this. In Japan, we use the nail metaphor of the nail that sticks up highest gets hit first, and in Sweden we have a very similar thing as well. And the whole Nordics does actually, but it's yeah, different cultures have their different phrases to capture this same sentiment. But it's interesting to hear the 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 cultural nuance of how it gets reinterpreted and what's the driving thought behind it. But I imagine it's interesting. So thank you for the additional
And
cultural
the
context.
U.S. is almost the opposite, Tyler, right?
Oh, totally. We're like
We're
jump, jump. We're trying to,
like
Squeaky
be
wheel gets
best,
the
be
grease here.
first, be loudest. That's how
yeah,
you win.
yeah, yep.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Mm-hmm, indeed. So, um, there's another, believe it or not, kind of speaking of Japan and China. Here's a Japan and China headline just came out today or a couple days ago that DJI, also one of the super big Chinese companies, was one of the big Chinese companies that America has recently banned, and which I find unfortunate because I absolutely love DJI and their drones. Um, and they are just kind of dominating the field of drones. And there was a report yesterday that their competitor in the US, run by Chris Anderson, was just acquired by Larry Page, the Google co founder, just acquired that drone company, which is very interesting because clearly he's doing that because he's going to try and make drones that move people around, not just your deliveries from Amazon, but actually move you. It's a drone taxi company that he's creating. And we showed photos about all of this yesterday from our Twitter account, which you should absolutely see because we showed the photos of all of these things. And by the way, if you're new to the room, everything we talk about, we share on our Twitter account in real time, live. So I'm now sharing this article about these Japanese and Chinese drone issue live right now from the Twitter account. And the point of this, again, this is from South China Morning Post, so it's a Chinese publication, and they're saying that the ban on the Chinese drones won't stop Japan's drone industry from taking off. In fact, it's actually going to really help it because now that the Chinese drone company DJI has been banned, now the Japanese drone companies get to take off. No pun intended. Or maybe there is. This is just a really bad pun. So the Japanese drones have traditionally relied on Chinese electronics and therefore take a kick from the falling. However, of course, they're going to come up with alternative electronics that they can use. And Japan, of course, is not. The Japanese drone companies now have an opportunity to kind of take advantage of this, similar to how when the Australian wine companies were banned by China, now the New Zealand wine companies are booming. So it's yes, this is one of those interesting things that happens during when things get banned between trade between countries or whatever. But it's an interesting article and an interesting point. So it'll be interesting to see which companies out of Japan, you're going to start seeing in VCs and investors in Japan throwing tons of money into drones in the near term, no doubt, in hopes that one of them will, become a potential strong competitor to DJI. So, Poppy, when we were talking about working long hours and the 996 phenomenon in China, sent in an article that is from the BBC, and the headline is "Long Working Hours Kill Nearly 1 million People a Year," according to a study. Long working hours are killing hundreds of thousands of people a year, according to the World Health Organization. The first global study of its kind showed that 745,000 people died from stroke and heart disease due to long hours. The report found that people living in Southeast Asia and Western Pacific region were the most affected. The World Health Organization also said the trend may worsen due to the coronavirus. Maybe that's got something to do with why people are kind of a little bit lax to going back to full speed after corona, because if anyone who had corona actually might not be, they might be a little more, they might have lost a little bit of their fitness, so to speak. That there might be something to that. That's really interesting. I had not considered that. So anyway, tweeting that one out. Thank you for that one, Poppy. And by the way, that's how Tech News Around the World works, is while we are talking about a topic, sorry, it was Chetna who found that article. Thank you, Chetna. While we talk about topics, people on stage and in the audience are finding related headlines and tweeting those in. And what do I mean by tweeting them in? Well, they tweet from their own Twitter account, which we encourage you to do, any article that you think we should check out. And you can let us know that it's a good article by simply including our Twitter account as part of your tweet, which is simply TNATW, which is mysteriously the first letters of tech news around the world. TNATW. It's absolutely magic how that happened. But that's the Twitter account, TNATW.
And something that's just occurring to me.
What's that?
That connection you just made.
Yeah. Isn't that a bizarre coincidence? And by the way, those of you who might be joining us, no doubt, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, my God, this is a beautiful audience. And you're right. It is. And not only that, it's also the most intelligent audience that you will find in Clubhouse, hands down. And you too can be beautiful and intelligent if you join the Tech News Club. And how do you do that? Well, it's very simple. I'm glad you asked. You click on the title of the room where you'll see the Tech News Club, and then you can follow the Tech News Club. And boy, oh boy, does a whole new world await you when you join the Tech News Club. Not only would you be more beautiful, more wealthy, more successful, and more happy, but your mom will love you again. That's what people are reporting. Your experience may vary, but we've had people. You can ask the people on stage. JT is flashing. JT, what was your experience?
Well, I can definitely say that my mom is more proud of me that I am part of the Tech News group now.
Yeah, see, that's true of everybody. And let me just say, I know your mom and your parents wanted you to be a doctor, and I'm sorry that it didn't work out. And I'm partly responsible, so I want to apologize. So, but we have something even much better. You can join the Tech News Club, and I promise you, your mom is going to be equally as proud as if you had become a doctor, because that's just how amazing the Tech News Club is. And some of our members are reporting that their IQs go up, and we even have a few members who said their credit score up. We had one gentleman actually grow 3 inches after joining the Tech News Club. We have several people who have lost weight as a result.
In height.
Yeah. Some people are growing, a few centimeters. People are losing pounds. It's a fantastic situation. So we encourage you to join the Tech News Club as well.
But the results do vary, right?
It's such a new phenomena. It's like COVID. Nobody fully understands it, so
no
we
one
don't know
really.
what side effects are.
It's like Chinese UFOs. I mean, no one really understands how it works, but it's real. Oh, it's definitely real.
David's trying to figure it out. He's working on it for us.
Yep. I'm just glad his mom is now proud of him as well. So if you want your mama to be proud, join the Tech News Club and make mama proud. And that's how it works. It's that simple. And by the way, today it's free. For today and today only, it's free. You can join for free. No cost at all. That's on us. You're welcome. And thank you for joining the Tech News Club. So other fantastic headlines floating around that somebody just tweeted in and I retweeted is this somebody named Jack Dorsey. Apparently he's the CEO of some startup called Twitter. Anyone heard of this thing? So Twitter was banned in Nigeria this week. That was one of the big articles this week, was it not, Cal? And the story continues even today, because just in the past few hours, Jack Dorsey is tweeting out, the people of Nigeria will lead Bitcoin. Hello. And why is that interesting? Well, sorry, wrong audio file. the Jack Dorsey tweeting out that the people of Nigeria will lead Bitcoin. He also tweeted out a very cryptic tweet of the Nigerian flag shaking hands with, like two hands shaking, and then the Bitcoin symbol, meaning Nigeria is shaking hands with Bitcoin, or Nigeria is going to join with Bitcoin. And then he does a full tweet that says the people of Nigeria will lead Bitcoin. And that's really wild for the leader of a very big, powerful tech social media platform to be making comments about a country that he's not involved in. If you do, you know what I'm saying? Because Bitcoin is that could be rather disruptive to their economic situation now that there's a bit of a conflict there. By the way, there's a bit of a conflict brewing between the current presidency and some other factions, and to be making comments during that time is a little disruptive, I
It's
would say.
reckless.
It's
It's
a bit,
reckless,
is it
Tyler.
not? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because there's the country's to Tyler's point, folks, the country is experiencing some sectarian violence. And to throw any type of gasoline on that fire, especially as a private citizen, not somebody affiliated with a government trying to quell the tensions, but actually do the opposite and try and get the people to kind of go outside of the government's grasp here is really reckless. And who knows how it's going to play out. But to Tyler's point, it could have disastrous consequences. So I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's taking too many shrooms, too much LSD, smoking too much pot, but I think he should shut his mouth, from my opinion.
it's a bit, you're the reckless
Wait,
is the, yeah, and
what?
you're
Didn't
responsible. Yeah.
you? This is Gabby. Let me just let you guys know that Jack Dorsey endorses Bitcoin in Nigeria, but he doesn't pay none of his employees Bitcoin. If he believed in it that much, he wouldn't be paying them in fiat. Pay attention.
Well,
Maria.
there's that, and also I was just wondering, didn't you mention, Tyler, that he was thinking about moving to Africa and that
Yes,
he
he said he
said that
would.
he
Yeah.
wanted to,
Yeah, he
yeah.
was.
So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that's like part of a bigger agenda that
Well,
he's,
they
building up.
opened Twitter in, remind me, Cal, which country was it? I keep thinking it's
Ghana.
But
Ghana,
It's
right?
yeah,
Ghana.
Right.
He's supposed to be there for 6 months. There's a whole new news article about it. I was
Right.
surprised to see him at the Bitcoin conference, honestly.
Right. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because another huge headline this week was that El Salvador's president and the country then voted on the passing of making Bitcoin a legal tender in El Salvador, right? And then, by the way, there's other new headlines that are breaking. Is May on stage? Because I saw May tweeted out that now Cuba is talking about adopting Bitcoin and stopping all usage of the US dollar, which, by the way, they still very much use there. When I visited there.
Yep, I'm
Yeah,
here.
right. So,
Well, yeah, you saw that one, and did you see the one I just tweeted now from the Dutch? So you
no.
got your answer. You got your
No.
answer. He
What?
said they're crazy. The Dutch financial ministry said that that's not what they're think. That's not how it's going to work.
Right. That guy's boss said, yeah, that's not exactly
He must have been having beers on the canals. It's been
right.
sunny.
So but here's what's so interesting is because of the fraternal nature of the leadership of the Latin countries, if El Salvador adopts it and then Cuba adopts it, they're all very friendly with each other. They go out fishing and shooting the shit and
Correct.
playing poker on the weekends. By the way, the leaders of these, Latin American countries. This is kind of well known. So, and they all, look after each other. Of course, they have their own squabbles internally. They have their own clubhouse group. It's private though. You can't really get into that clubhouse room, but they do very much hang out together. And they do have a united sort of healthy concern for their own relations with the U.S. Let's put it that way. So, because the U.S. and the relationship with Latin America has been a bit, could have been a lot better. Let's put it that way. And so they stick together. They watch each other's back. And if one of them is adopting Bitcoin, we even said when and we did start to see it. It was only a day later that there was another one. May probably recalls Nicaragua.
Yeah, well, it's happening. It's happening in Nicaragua, Panama, Guatemala,
right,
and also Costa Rica.
Now Costa Rica is talking about it. Cuba's talking about it. And by the way, Cuba will be the first one to say, fuck the US dollar.
Totally.
Because Cuba it's not that they hate America, but America really tried to assassinate and do everything they could to shut down Cuba for a very, very, very long time. And so there's still a lot of resentment there from the current, even though it's no longer the Castros are no longer in charge there. Raul just pass it down to somebody else. But yeah, Cuba still harbors a lot of resentment for how America dealt with Cuba. And so they would love to get on something like Bitcoin, honestly, if that were a viable option. So if Cuba does, and the fraternal leadership of South and Central America does, and then this is why I say at this moment, if countries that are having difficulties, here's what I want people to take away from this, of Jack Dorsey doing this incredibly reckless tweet. And I got nothing negative on Jack Dorsey. I have no beef with Jack. I think Jack's brilliant, and I have nothing but good things to say about Jack. But this tweet is, I find, a little. We need to discuss this tweet, Jack, if you're listening, because the when a country's having a bit of sectarian violence, that is a moment when things like that is an opportunistic moment to suggest to the people, yeah, hey, maybe your currencies can collapse in those scenarios, or certainly weaken, and to remind people at that moment, hey, everybody, now might be a good time to get on Bitcoin. It's a little irresponsible, but now here's my point: is he might have a bit of conflict of interest in proposing this.
Tyler,
It could be a
I've
bit
got
selfish, is it not?
yeah. Well, I've got something that I found out about Jack, which was from a firsthand. Remember, I mentioned on my trip back
Yeah,
that I met Acon's manager, Will.i.am, and
that's right. On the flight back. That's right.
on the
Yes.
flight back, and he said
and Tony
to me,
Robbins,
Jack,
and going to Costa Rica.
they are going there, and Jack is
Yes.
going to meet Acon in Costa Rica in July. And I'll give you two pieces of information that I will make it as simple as Yip and Yannicka as I can. Jack Dorsey announced at Bitcoin conference that he's looking to get into the hardware wallet business for Bitcoin.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Number two.
And his own wallet, Cash App, already handles Bitcoin, by the way. Yeah.
Correct. Now, no. So then that's number two. Number three, Square.
Right.
Okay, now we use Square everywhere, okay? So the unique part about it, he's got Twitter, but he's got Square. So I think if I were to take a gamble on this one, I think he's going to introduce that wallet. And I think he's totally like, I mean, he had like his tie-dye shirt on. He's totally like granola, Costa Rica.
Right.
I totally could see him vibing with the Costa Ricans. And I could totally see him making a stand to bring that wallet or that experience to Costa Rica. I mean, and I'm just saying.
Can I add to this? Akon?
Yeah.
Akon just signed a deal with this guy named Jeffrey David, who was leading Big Clout Records, and they decided to change it over to Sunrise Records. And I just found this out yesterday. And Akon is doing this decentralized merger with a few people. I'm gonna find the screenshot. I'm gonna send it to you guys. It's all connected.
Yeah, Tyler, just a quick added piece. I will be on top of that one in a couple of ways. One is that the manager already asked me, he wants to stay in touch because he lives between New York City and London, and he took my phone number, so he is going to communicate with me because he does want to rendezvous in Costa Rica if I'm up for it. And number two, I really have a unique, I don't know, I just have a feeling that something's going to be happening in the LATAM region. And I did tweet out, Tyler, that there was a unicorn in the LATAM region 2 months ago. It did happen, Bitso. And I tweeted and I shared it with you. So when you start seeing these experiences, as you so eloquently shared, I think people are just getting very tired. I think COVID sort of opened up some eyes wider where the governments are not really taking care of the people as they expected. And I think now you're going to see a lot more movement. But I just feel like we're in, do you remember the movie, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World?
I remember the title.
It's a very old film. Old film. And I just feel like we're in the middle of that.
So check this out. So somebody just DM'd me, and if they want to jump up on stage, or actually I think they might be on stage, and if they want to jump in, of course they can. But they just solved the riddle, because Nigeria already has the third largest Bitcoin transactions by volume of country in terms of countries actually utilizing Bitcoin. Nigeria is very high up on the utilization. And then similarly, the article that just came out right before Jack's tweet, an article hit CoinDesk, which he no doubt is familiar with. Nigeria's central bank may launch a digital currency pilot later this year. So shortly after that headline comes out, Jack probably doesn't want Nigeria to go into a digital currency of their own. He would
True,
prefer
but Tyler,
but
similar to
that would explain his, which is, hey, Nigeria, stay with Bitcoin because you're already using it. Don't fall for this digital currency. Yeah, go ahead.
Correct, but the only two added pieces that was confirmed by this gentleman, he did say that the Akon's already working, and the Akon token has already been accepted by 4 countries in Africa. He said that specifically, and they have been in communication with Charles Hutchinson of Cardano. They have been talking with him, and that is correct that Charles is doing something heavy in Ethiopia. So Charles is not bullshitting anyone. He is actively moving on the ground in Africa, and Akon has been present in conversations and dealings there. I will keep you posted because there is a closed LATAM group inside Clubhouse, but as of post-Miami visit, I was a young lady reached out to me on my DM on Instagram and asked me to come speak on the stage. So I am going into one of those groups. And it's going to be in Spanish and English, but I think mostly Spanish. And she came to me because I'm female. So I am going into one of those closed groups where they're going to talk about crypto and Bitcoin and what the state of affairs is in Latin America. So I'm happy to bring some information back and also share with them tech news around the world. We need to do it in Espanol.
Yeah.
This tweet, I just want to reassert. I mean, there may be a puzzle that'll come together, and a month from now we'll look back and say, I get what Jack's, but he's acting like Trump on Twitter, right?
Yeah, that's a Trumpish type of tweet. Yeah, you're right.
It's a Trumpish kind of thing. I mean, it's just to Justin's point.
It's very uncharacteristic. That's what I really, I'm actually very fond of Jack. I think very highly of him. I almost want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he knows something that we don't. But on the face of it, it's reckless and irresponsible to be kind of meddling in foreign affairs of a country that you, by the way, just got banned in. I imagine that has to play some role in this. And
Tyler, how much of Square's business is in Africa?
I don't know.
That would be to Cal's point. I agree with you, Tyler. I think he has a good intent, and I think there's meaning behind this. That's why I'm also curious what the Square business is. There's
one very other important point to bring up on this conversation, which is at that Bitcoin event that you were just at, he said somebody asked him, he said on Twitter again in the past 2 or 3 days, somebody asked him again, what about a decentralized Twitter? And he responded essentially, it's only a matter of time. And if that's the case, then he, of course, he understands the importance of decentralized versus centralized. And how could he be in favor of a decentralized Twitter and not be in favor of a decentralized Bitcoin?
Bingo.
So this is where it gets really, really, really fucking interesting, because as of right now, the Bitcoin, what in its essence, and jump in here, Ben, was started out as with sort of decentralization at its heart, and the Satoshi essentially engineered it for the purposes that it be able to exist in a decentralized fashion. Right? Can we start with that, Ben? Right.
Yep.
So it's safe to assume that he envisioned it to be a decentralized thing, and everything that he has said about it, which is very, in the white papers, gives the indications that he envisioned a decentralized solution. So if that's the case, and Jack certainly seems to be enamored with the Satoshi vision of things. However, the Satoshi vision has been bear hugged, ladies and gentlemen. It's been compromised. It's been subverted and adopted and bastardized, I would even say, by greed, essentially, where the powers that be are now taking Bitcoin into the hands of the powers that be, the banks and the governments, and they are strangling it and have control of it on the on ramps and off ramps, and it's fully under their jurisdiction, under their control. It's essentially no longer really what it was intended to be. It's these centralized digital currencies are sort of emblematic of that. And now here comes Jack, and perhaps Jack is actually gonna be uh, the crypto messiah and actually drive the decentralized
Ding, ding,
Bitcoin.
ding, 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 ding. I
Yeah,
would probably say that. I think that's actually it.
based on how he was dressed at that Bitcoin event and the fact that he was there and didn't say anything to the
Exactly.
contrary, and that goddamn beard all of a sudden makes a lot of sense all of a
Yeah,
sudden,
he
does it not?
does. He does fall into that picture, but also remember that the video, you could find it. The woman, the MAGA, the Trump supporter that actually went after him about that comment,
Right.
and it was she was thrown out. He handled it like so gracefully,
Yeah.
and
But
I
he
was like,
he
I was
wasn't
The
like,
actually.
woman, you
Yeah.
guys, the woman's name is Laura Loomer, and she's
Uh-huh.
currently banned on Twitter. Just
Yeah.
to add some context there.
Yeah. But I
which is
think
super
he
fascinating.
held no animus in his heart towards
No, not at
her
all.
point at all. In fact, he probably empathized with her on the point she was really wanting to raise. So that's what I said when it went down. I said he was incredibly, remarkably, notably calm
Poised.
and ready to engage in that conversation. And he said,
And
incredible. Yeah,
you know why
yeah,
I believe that is? Because
yeah,
Twitter hires a lot of contractors to do a lot of the work, like
yeah,
the diversity, the this, that, the other.
yeah,
One thing Jack cannot stop is when his employees suspend or do something that makes him look like he's censoring certain accounts. He
yeah.
cannot stop that. He has not been able to do it. And the only way he could do it is to go decentralized. And they're going to lose their jobs, but it's the only way to stop what human error.
But you
Gabby's 100% correct. This
you know
is
what else?
exactly what I totally hear as well. Gabby,
You
that's spot on.
you know what else is interesting if we keep crawling down this rabbit hole is the fact that when he talks about Bitcoin, he talks about it in the same kind of ways that Satoshi does, which is like how it has this tremendous game changing power, which that's not really what the centralized version of Bitcoin, the people who are in the process of kind of centralizing Bitcoin, they're not talking like that in the kind of grandiose power shake up
Yeah,
ways, right?
I'm not sure it's being centralized, Tyler. It's moving in the opposite direction, the distribution of wealth. The on ramps and the off ramps, sure, you can still mine, you can still, anybody's free to use on ramps and off ramps. Nobody's stopping you doing it. It's very free in most countries. Once you're on, you do what you like. There are peer-to-peer exchanges like localbitcoins.com where you can buy off other people. You're still free to get Bitcoin by mining. You're still free to get it by extorting people, stealing it, hijacking things, using ransomware as a service. There's lots of other ways to get it. So just, not that I recommend those, FYI.
Yeah. I mean the bigger name players who are making moves in the space. There's a lot of greed motives, and there's the to maintain and to foster Satoshi's vision requires a bit of altruism in a way, and not being so. You can take a more greedy approach, and there are no shortage of startups that are just taking advantage of the financial opportunities around crypto, and are it's about making a dollar more than it is about building this decentralized world. And it's perhaps easier to make money if taking the former rather than the latter. It's easier to make a quick buck in crypto land by playing into the hands of the powers that be rather than fulfilling Satoshi's vision.
Tyler, but it's very
Maybe.
interesting. Tyler, this is very interesting though, because we could take it a teensy bit down the rabbit hole and take it back to Square, because Square is a payments. That's payments. And I really believe that the fact that he even said that he's in thinking of making a Bitcoin hardware wallet. I'm sorry, I have a feeling he's gonna come out. Well, I don't want to use the word messiah, but I think he's gonna come out to be a massive supporter, because to Gabby's point, I think he genuinely wants to do something, but he can't. And I think that's where, if he does decentralize it and he does get involved with Square in a hardware wallet, he now could go taking the Satoshi prophecy further, but he can't if he stays in the current state with Twitter and stuff. So if he sort of dissolves Twitter and moves it to Blue Sky and makes it decentralized, then everyone, then it kind of allows him to prophesize on that side, and Square takes all the payment clients with it. So I mean, like literally, and Cash App's already doing Bitcoin, and they could. It's just, the ecosystem's there for him.
I say good luck to him, because he's fighting all the first world countries and then going into the third world countries to sell this other dream. So it's really,
Gabby,
it's a,
you're right. That's like
no,
what
yeah,
keeps
I'm
me
not
going.
Yeah, I
watching
also
I
him.
say good
mean,
luck to
It's a
him.
complete disorder. It's like,
and you know what? But one thing I've learned about power and people, just watching Trump and watching just all kinds of phenomena, is that you start to delude yourself. All human beings, the power gets to their head. Now, to some extent, I mean, this tweet, obviously we'll unravel it and we'll look at it, and there's going to be a genius story at the back end of it potentially, or he's starting to do some dumb things underneath a very strong, passionate intent around Bitcoin and Satoshi's vision, right? So, but some behavior just starts to look very odd, and that starts to show the unraveling of human kind of condition,
Another
really.
midlife crisis.
How old is Jack Dorsey, Tyler? Oh, he's not there.
I don't
How
know
old is
how
Jack
old he is.
Dorsey?
43.
He look. How old is that?
43.
Okay, he looks much younger than that on stage.
you guys, it's not a midlife crisis. He's tired of being censored his damn self
Correct.
if
I
you pay
agree.
attention.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I agree with
And
Gabby 100%.
and if I see him cease to exist like Jack Bourdain, then I know what's really happening, because that guy was living his best life, traveling the world, showing us to America, and you saw what happened to him. Like, that's all I'm gonna say.
I just Googled and Jack is now 44. So it's super interesting. Ben, you just shared a headline about DeepMind. You want to jump on that one?
Yeah, just DeepMind are doing some pretty freaking cool stuff. These are the people who started off by winning well, they've done a few things, but winning at Go, the game of Go, which interesting. Quick story. I backed a Kickstarter about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was the idea of the Kickstarter was to fund a documentary about how computers could never ever beat humans at the game of Go, because it's so much more complicated than chess. And so I backed this Kickstarter, and just before the bloody thing went live, I got the DeepMind, of course, created this machine, AlphaGo, that beat the Grandmaster of Go, and he pretty much resigned from the game of Go and said that this is like playing a god, and God knows what's going on here. And then the documentary people from the Kickstarter said, "Oh, we've got to revise our documentary. It's going to be about the history of Go now. It's not going to be about how you can never never beat humans at it." I suggest they called it Going, Going, Gone, but I don't think they did that. So it was pretty interesting, and then since then they've gone on to do that without any previous knowledge of any Go games, just on a desktop computer, just sits there and thinks to itself for 72 hours and exceeds 5,000 years of human accumulated knowledge about Go. And then the same algorithm can now do the same for chess. The same algorithm, not even tweaked, for chess, and the same algorithm can play Atari games. And their approach, their reinforcement learning approach, is just amazing. And this article just takes it a step further. It's them saying that they think that it can be applied, can be the thing that we need for general artificial intelligence. So artificial general intelligence. So it's pretty interesting. And it often gets forgotten. I'm always banging the reinforcement learning drum when people bring up machine learning, because they often go, "Oh, it's all it's only going to just replicate the biases in the data we've already got." It's like, yeah, well, that's supervised learning, or it's only going to find these weird patterns, but it's never going to do anything novel. Well, yeah, that's unsupervised learning. But remember reinforcement learning; it can do profound things with zero external data. Never having seen a game of Go, just knowing the rules, it can think to itself for 72 hours and beats 5,000 years of accumulated human study. That's pretty amazing. And that was years ago. We're well beyond that. So they're the people to watch is basically the bottom line, DeepMind.
Yeah, and I just retweeted out your article from the Tech News Twitter account, which is TNATW, the first letters of tech news around the world. And the headline is DeepMind researchers say reinforced learning is the key to cracking general AI. And that is the kind of the holy grail in AI, is to make this what they are calling general AI. And general AI will not emerge from solving complicated problems, but by sticking to a simple but powerful principle called reward maximization. And they show a little incredibly simple diagram about that. And then it goes into a really nice story as about general AI developing abilities through reward maximization, how humans do that, and how we can make AIs that do that. And there's a YouTube video at the bottom of it, and it's a really interesting article. So you can find that on the Twitter account. Thank you for that, Ben.
Can I just add a couple of really quick things without boring everybody to death on it? Two more things on it. One is that I bumped into Dennis Hassabis in Cambridge years ago and at a talk, and one of the things I asked him is, at what point are you going to let the machines set their own goals? And he said, we're going to be really careful before we do that. But that's another thing to watch. At the moment, we tell the machine what the rewards are, what the goal is, and it goes from there. And it's amazing at it. The bridge we're going to need to be really take a deep breath before we cross is the one where we say, hey, machine, you work out what the goal is. And then you go after it. So that's going to be an amazing chasm to cross. So in fact, that's the main point. So I'll stop. I'll read it there.
Well, there's an analogy to that when you are interviewing a very brilliant person on stage. If they are far more brilliant than you, one of the best questions you can ask is, what's the best question I can ask you? Because generally they know what's a better question to ask them than you do. And that's essentially what you're referring to with the AI. It's like, hey, AI, what problem should you solve? And said, oh, you silly human, you've been asking me to solve these ridiculously stupid little game puzzles like chess and Go. Here's what we should really be working on. And then all of a sudden it's, watch the fuck out. So, yeah, really interesting article. And about a related article that I just found from the CEO of NVIDIA is chiming in on this issue because NVIDIA makes chips that are part of the secret sauce of doing machine learning and also building blockchains. And in summary, the NVIDIA CEO, his name is Jensen Huang, he's talking about the NVIDIA's Omniverse, they're calling it, the metaverse for engineers, and he's discouraging crypto miners from buying its graphic process, from buying NVIDIA chips during the chip shortage, assumedly because he feels there's a better, he would prefer that the chip, during this chip shortage, that it be used for other things. So apparently he's not strong on the crypto front and would like it to be saved for more, what he feels are more important things like the machine learning work and the metaverse work, kind of the VR work that the NVIDIA is part of. Pardon me while I choke to death on this. Wow.
And he's absolutely right on that, by the way, Tyler, while you die quietly there. Because, his GPUs are only used to mine secondary coins. So that really is a waste of power, in my opinion. So, yeah, he's absolutely right to throttle that back.
And then, but I just tweeted that out from the Tech News Twitter account, so you can jump into that as well. Another interesting article that's kind of one of the most popular ones being shared. I think Cheryl shared this one. Thank you, Cheryl. Where Instagram's chief, named Adam Mosseri, explains how Instagram decides what you see. Kind of opening the kimono, as we call it, on the algorithm of Instagram, which people, even here in Clubhouse, you see rooms dedicated to this all the time. And Michelle on stage is flashing her mic, works at Facebook, which is the owner of Instagram. And she's no doubt seen those rooms. I imagine everyone in this room has seen those rooms here in Clubhouse. And so it says Instagram's chief, Adam Mosseri, shed some light on how the social network decides what you see in a new blog post that came out this week. The explanation seems to be meant, at least in part, to combat persistent rumors that Instagram intentionally hides or disfavors certain posts which Instagram says isn't exactly true. The short answer on how Instagram works is that it's complicated. Instagram uses thousands of signals to determine what you see in your feed, according to Masseri, and there isn't just one algorithm that decides what shows up for you, but the company is also committed to better explaining why content is taken down and how the service surfaces posts. One of the more surprising revelations: most Instagram followers won't see your post anyway because most people look at less than half of their feed. Now, I found this article myself personally interesting for two reasons. One, we had a conversation very recently about the fact that absolutely one of the biggest headlines this week is that the U.S. government has just created 5 new bills, like on Thursday and Friday, that they are intending to use to limit the powers of the big tech companies: Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google. And one of those 5 bills is all around kind of their data and making their data transportable between services so that you can take your data with you between services, so that you're not locked into Apple. You can move between Apple and Google and Microsoft and any other future kind of competitors. And by locking in your data, you're disincentivized from ever leaving, and that maintains their monopoly position. So when we were talking about this, Akil, who joins us regularly from India, made a really brilliant point about how difficult or easy would it be to have standardized data that you could export between these companies. And he knows damn well that's really, 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 really difficult to do that because, as I said, the data and the amount of data signals that they have and the amount of data they collect about their users is I said the word thousands. There are thousands of variables in their algorithms. And I know that because me and Jason were building a search engine called Mahalo. And as part of that process, you get to learn a little bit about how complex these algorithms are, like Google's search recommendation results, the search engine result pages, you call them SERPs in the industry. And there are thousands of variables in these algorithms in terms of what you see on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever. And so that's why I wasn't surprised at all when the Instagram chief, Adam Mosseri, says, in short, it's complicated. Instagram uses thousands of signals to determine what you see. He's not kidding. There's literally thousands. But now you need to ask yourself, what are these thousands of signals? Well, they're data points about you. Thousands? There's thousands of data points about me? Well, yeah, there's a hell of a lot more data about you than you ever dreamed possible that they are including in these algorithms. And that was my point, was when the government approaches Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Google and says, hey, we need a little more structured data so that your users can export their data, those big tech companies are going to be like, that's not possible because we collect ridiculous, obscene amounts of data from our users that they aren't really aware that we collect. And so we can't we can't let them export it because then they'll know exactly what all we are collecting. And we're collecting 50 times, 100 times more than they think we are collecting. And that's why their algorithm, as he says himself, has thousands of signals to determine what you see in your feed. Well, how could they possibly have thousands of signals unless they are collecting way more data about you than you ever imagined? Akil?
Yeah,
You know,
it's
I
not
wanted
just
Yeah,
to.
data that you
Tyler, this
give
is
them, Tyler.
Michelle speaking. Go ahead, Akil.
No, no, please, Michelle, ladies first.
No, I just wanted to say that portability will be technically possible,
Yes.
but again, even when we're talking about signals,
Yep.
it's what is powered on top of existing data. So it may not necessarily belong to an individual, but it's the micro intelligent learnings that comes out of that huge pile of data, and it will not belong to me, for instance. Let's say if the algorithm thinks I'm likely to take an action, that's a learning, but in fact, it's not really my data. I don't know how to I don't know how to unpack it,
Yes.
but that is actually what makes the
I can help
system
you
works
out.
better,
Yeah.
I think you're talking
So
about data you give the platform, and then there is data that the platform inferences from the data that
Correct.
you've given them. So there are actually two types of data that
Right.
the platform
yeah, and then
collects.
I mean, if you export your data, the next website may not be able to kind of leverage it as those platforms are currently leveraging it. So that's why the whole signal ecosystem is more complex than just using
Yes.
3 billion people's data.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, why doesn't the
Akil.
U.S. have any?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wonder. I'm sorry, Jeff again.
Yeah, Jeff.
I'm just wondering why the U.S. Does not have any GDPR kind of rules, because it's a huge data privacy issue, and there's several lawsuits right now in Europe over. I don't know if you guys are familiar with FATCA. It's the Foreign Tax Compliance Act that under Obama they tried to track accounts overseas, and it affects a lot of us Americans living overseas. And there's a lawsuit right now in the UK going after these people for data privacy.
Hmm.
If I may just quickly add
Hey, can
something,
I?
I think I just wanted to say California has the equivalent of GDPR, and I think it's kind of even more repressive in a way. But this particular topic is not this. I mean, GDPR will not solve for that because there is first party data and third party data. And I mean, I can unpack that another time, but I just want to say that we may be conflating a few things here.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to add on to what Michelin said. Yes, that's correct. I mean, the California, in fact, sort of introduced the CCPA, which is very similar to the GDPR, but covering for non-personal data is something that's still not being done progressively anywhere. And a sort of nationwide law for the US is still required because just by virtue of incorporating yourself in any other state, you're able to sort of avoid the stringent requirements that California has.
Yeah. Todd, you just shared a relevant article. You want to touch on this one? On the AI? Todd McLeese, are you there?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Tyler, I
No
had to
worries.
get to my phone. Sorry
No
about that.
problem.
So, I would. It just Ben's comment
Yeah.
on
On AI?
Go and so forth reminded me of what was going on with Google, where Google now has AI that is designing chips, which in this room this week somebody said isn't very difficult, and they're proving that they have an AI that is doing chip design that they are now manufacturing, and they're saving thousands of human hours and developing chip designs that are actually teaching the experts how to design better. So the AI is outperforming humans, and it's doing it in single-digit hours, just because it's analyzed so many different chip designs and it's teaching them how to design more efficiently and so forth. And many of those designs, just like in Go, where the AI developed new strategies that the grandmasters had never experienced, these chip designs were not intuitively better for the experts, but it turns out that they were. And so now it's altering and taking thousands of hours of human effort away in future chip design.
It's such a brilliant point as a follow-up to Ben's previous point. And the headline, and I just retweeted it from the Tech News Twitter account. I retweeted Todd's tweet, which is Google researchers show artificial intelligence can design microchips better and faster than humans can. So AIs are being used to develop chips for AI. And that gets into kind of the robot start building itself better than the human can, and it's a wild kind of slippery slope from there. It's a brilliant art share.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
sorry, it's particularly with the reinforcement learning because it doesn't just make an incremental improvement on what we've done before. So like supervised learning, basically it's like a scatter chart, draws a straight line through it, and you can find something a little bit further along. But it just kind of starts from first principles. I saw some drone chassis that AI had produced. The chassis for a drone, a flying drone. It looked like an animal. It looked like it was made of bone. And it was optimized for stiffness and weight and aerodynamics and all that together. And it's just nothing. You could just look at it and say, a human would never design that.
Yeah,
I'll try and
it's
find it and tweet
amazing.
it.
Yeah, I mean, because we use a lot of CAD products, and they do that's called generative design. And when you let the CAD do it, you set the goals, and the shapes that come out are, like you say, they're organic, they're bones, they're optimized to minimize strength to weight. It's like Mother Nature designed it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to study it to work out what's so special about it. Because
Well,
as Tyler said a minute ago, your intuition as an expert fails you initially. You look at it and you think, what the hell? And then you study it and you think, Christ, that's clever. So,
you
yeah.
know what's funny
In
about?
this instance,
Go ahead, Todd.
they use the example of the AI designing using donut shapes for the chips in order to minimize the distance between the components of the chip.
And to Chris, you made the interesting point that AI is making the most optimized designs based on shapes for weight strength ratios ends up looking like things that nature would make and not man would make, does question that nature is itself, in fact, incredibly intelligent, that there is actually a supreme intelligence involved in nature.
Well, it's weird. Like I'm reading about this slime. It's a single-celled slime, but it has memory, and it and it like knows how to find food and solve mazes and things. And it's continually mind-boggling how amazing the universe is. And to that point, I come from like an aquarium world in the past life, and I studied a lot about photosynthesis. And the thing that always struck me is I was reading a passage about plants and their leaves, and the author described it as a three-dimensional antenna that's tuned to receive a certain wavelength of light. And when you think about it that way, it's like, whoa, that really is an antenna that is like moving in real time to collect light. And I can't wait to see what AI comes up with.
Did you know there are?
And to Tyler's point about sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
No, go. I was just going to say, by the way, nature has now making solar powered plants that self-replicate. By the way, go ahead, Ben.
Well, to your point about the intelligence of nature, I mean, you give something billions of years of trial and error, and it is just remarkable what happened. I've been studying a little bit of tree surgery lately, I'm more action biased, doing a bit of tree surgery. Only taken a small amount off the end of my fingers with a chainsaw so far. My 8-year-old son advised hold it by the handle and not by the blade. And one of the things about trees that I've just discovered is the mycelial network underground. There's this fungal network for communication between the trees, and they can almost like into IP routing. They can say, "Hey, this tree over here needs more nutrients." It's just ridiculous.
Okay, now,
and tying that back to the reinforcement learning is the thing is that it's doing that. If the reinforcement learning has a sufficiently good model of the world that it's trying to improve, that's tractable to something like a drone chassis. We know enough about modeling aerodynamics and mass and airflow and all this. If it has a good enough model of the world, then it can just do that in its own brain. It can just do effectively millions of years of trial and error and evolution in a matter of hours. And that's the thing that's just incredible. And the more that they build the things model of the world, the more that it will be able to solve bigger and bigger and more real world problems. So it's a pretty exciting area.
Yeah, I'll being it's a very special Sunday unscripted version of Tech News Around the World, I will indulge and reveal something very personal that is perhaps inappropriate, which is, to your point, Ben, I also, scientists are figuring out, researchers are starting to understand that plants are far more intelligent and complex than we assume or have assumed, and that how they communicate under the ground, and there's a lot of really incredibly highly intelligent behaviors going on, that some of which can be seen through time lapse videos of beanstalks on YouTube videos, where they do it's basically they're moving at the pace of Earth, where a year is a day, like the expansion of Earth is a breath cycle.
That's it.
Yeah, and these yeah. But
go on, sorry.
But these beanstalks do. Somebody please find me the video. I'll find it. These are truly will blow your fucking mind. And here's what happens: we'll get the YouTube video. We will tweet it so that you can see it. You have to see these. That you take two bean stalks that are in two little pots with a time lapse camera in a lab, and you put a pole between the two pots with the growing bean sprouts. And they come out of the ground as these tiny little beanstalks. They start growing up, and they start looking for something to grab onto so they can grow up, right? And when they have leaves that sprout out, they get light, they're solar powered in a sense, and then the two competing beanstalks are looking for something to attach so they can climb up. As soon as one of the two grab the pole, it gets very strong and starts climbing up the pole very fast, as anyone knows who's ever done gardening. The shocking thing is, somehow, for some reason, the other plant that didn't touch the pole knows that the other plant has touched the pole and grows up, and the other plant dies knowing I'm no longer going to be able to grow because the other plant got the bean pole.
Are these plants connected?
No, they're in no ways connected. But they're somehow communicating, and one plant's telling the other plant, haha, I got the pole, you can die now because I'm the one who's going to grow up the pole and you're not.
Wait, how is that possible?
You watch the video, but it's still not understood how.
Chemistry. Chemistry.
Yeah, there is.
Tyler, that's super fascinating what you shared about that beanstalk, because you can see it in some plants. Yeah. When you actually have plants in a pot, and the Dutch really like to garden.
Yep.
They really take this gardening seriously. And when you just watch them, and I lived in an ashram and I used to actually take care of the garden, and it was one of the things, it was a karma yoga that I did, that if you see this plant and then they're growing, they could be next to each other with their roots, but there is also that bit of the survival of the fittest with them as well.
Yeah.
Because I swear my plant during COVID killed off his the other half of the plant just so that he could grow bigger. And I found it really fascinating because I just watched it and it was almost like he suffocated the other plant, but he grew super big. So, and I mean, whether
Or,
it's he
or
or she, it was just very interesting to see.
or the other plant gives up because it realizes the important part of its job is to spread the DNA
Correct.
of the plant.
Correct, exactly. No, but that's also, I mean, I'm vegetarian, so yes, you're absolutely correct. But I think that's what's fascinating about nature is that because the one that dies off just goes back into the soil, and then of course it just regenerates, right? Because that's how you could splice off and make a new plant is by cutting it on an angle and putting it in water till the roots grow, and then you've propagated another plant. So the plants are just
I
fascinating.
just, by the way, thank you to Manaz in the audience who just found the video I was looking for. I'm just tweeting it now. You have to watch this. It will absolutely blow your
Yeah.
fucking mind.
There's another great movie on this topic called The Secret World of Fungi about mushrooms and
Yeah.
how in a similar way
Yeah.
they're all interconnected. I just tweeted that as
So
well.
I'll
And Tyler,
retweet it.
your point about the timescales, I
Yeah.
think, is the crucial point,
Yeah.
right? Is that if you just watch it sped up and
Yeah.
go to their timescale, then the simplest of plants look intelligent. And this reminds me of a comment again at one of the universities when the Cambridge universities were open for public lectures before COVID. One of the audience members asked, "Oh, somebody super famous. What's his name? Doesn't matter. Who cares? Some dude." They said to him, what would it be like if a artificial general intelligence was to have a conversation with a human? What would it be like for the artificial general intelligence? And he thought about it for a second, and he said it would be like a human talking to a tree.
So hang on.
And
Are you ready for this? Now, I said I was going to share something inappropriate and very personal. So check this out. We've done now nearly 200 episodes of Tech News Around the World, and this is the first time I've shared this. So
Should we all grab a chair and
sit
sit
down,
down for this one,
folks.
Tyler?
Grab a chair, have a seat. About 20 years ago, when I was about 20-ish, I and my friends ate a bunch of mushrooms. Speaking of how mycelium help communication between plants, and we took a particular type of mycelium called psilocybin cubensis. And what happened next? I had no idea what to expect. Nobody had told me what to expect. I'd never done anything like this before, and had no expectations. I thought I was going to see, flying unicorns and rainbows and shit like that. That's not what happened at all. What happened is I'm walking through the forest, and all of a sudden the trees starts talking to me telepathically, and they tell me things that were not in my intellectual drawers or capacity previously. So this was incredibly foreign information that was coming to me that I was not privy to previously. So I don't think it was coming from within my own cranium. And it shook me to my core, so much so that I still and have spent 20 years investigating precisely what happened. And that's a very deep rabbit hole indeed. Although you do find out this is actually incredibly common side effect or effect of taking large doses of psilocybin is communication with Mother Nature and with plants. And she says very incredibly deeply profound things, as she told me. And I'll just share with you what the message I was sent. And the message that I was told was, you are humans, we are the plants and the trees, and you are very new on this planet, and we've been here a long, long, long time before you. And you are a baby to us, and we watch you with a lot of fascination, and you think you're very intelligent, and well, we are too, and you'll come to realize we're much more intelligent than you think. And more importantly, we are actually related. The same thing, this is the words that it communicated, although it was telepathically, the same thing that is of you that causes you to grow and age and die is the same precise system in us that causes us to be born and to grow and to age and to die. And we are actually cousins, in fact. And that thought was not in my brain. That was not a possible thought of my 20-year-old self. And it does turn out to be, just like as we are now learning decades later about mycelium and how plants do talk to each other and to animals, by the way, that they do have RNA, and they do operate on the DNA basis that humans do, precisely as the plant was telling me, which I was shocked when I realized that years later as part of my research as to what exactly was going on. And what I also learned was, as part of when you're on a large dose of psilocybin, your regular human senses are greatly amplified. Your sight is actually improved, and this is easily testable in a lab and has been tested many times. And your sight is improved, your hearing is magnified, your smell is wildly magnified, and your taste, holy shit, is your taste wildly amplified. And this is well known to anybody who's ever done these. But there's also potentially, it is known that we have our regular senses, and it is safe to assume that we are not done evolving as organic beings, and eventually we will evolve another sense. And that sense is not yet fully evolved. What's in the process is that it's in the nascent embryonic stage, where it's in between, as our sight was at one point in between nothing and where it is today, and our hearing evolved over time, and we're in the process of developing another sense, which is what animals undoubtedly all probably also have as well, which is a telepathic ability to sense things between ourselves and plants and animals. And when you're on psilocybin and all of your senses are amplified, so is this nascent embryonic sense that eventually will become more attuned, which is this kind of telepathic ability to talk with plants and animals and maybe other people at a distance. So perhaps it's not a coincidence that you can talk with plants when you're on this, because your senses are amplified in a way that they normally are not. And that's just one theory, but I was always struck by that profound message, and I've never looked at plants ever the same way ever again. I now perceive them as conscious beings, as they told me they were. So that's
So
my
do you eat them
If
though,
I
Tyler?
if I
yeah.
can add
You
I
some
consume them?
science,
but yes,
if I can add some science
yeah.
news about like news, I mean, a lab in Australia, a professor, she found that plants can make a conditioned memory. I don't know if anyone heard about it. This was a few years ago. She did an experiment. She gave sunlight from a specific angle every day at the same time, and the plant then turns toward the light and opens up towards the light during that time. And she paired this food, basically input, with wind inputs from the same specific angle, and wind or some sort of movement of the air. It doesn't mean anything usually to the plants, like they wouldn't turn towards it, rather away. So after 10 days or so, she could just turn on that wind from this angle, and the plant would turn towards that direction. So the memory formed a conditioned memory, just like the bell and the dog experiment that
Pavlov,
was
yeah.
done a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
Tyler,
And
I have a question.
it is known that the trees and plants communicate through the fungal
Yeah,
system,
we
and
were
it's like
talking about that a minute
yeah,
ago. Yeah.
and they also communicate through pheromones,
Yes.
plants.
Thank you.
So
Yep.
yeah.
Exactly. We were just
I
talking
have
about.
a
Okay, hold that
I have
thought.
a question.
Go ahead. 1 second, Akil. So
Yep.
the Evan just tweeted, and I just retweeted to the Tech News Twitter account, which you should absolutely follow. TNATW, the first letters of Tech News around the world. The Secret Lives of Fungi, which I have seen, and it's fantastic. And other people are sending in other great articles, like Katarina and Heyman. Go ahead, Akil. What was your question?
Um, yeah, it's just a crazy thought that just entered my head. What if human beings have evolved in the future, and we did invent time machines, and the aliens that we see today are actually evolved human beings
Yeah, but
who've
that's
traveled in from the future?
a common theory. So Heyman,
That's also why they can't say they're not extraterrestrial. They're very factual with their terms.
mhm.
Yeah, the thing is, just to temper that a tiny bit, forward time travel is completely easy. It happens every time you put something on every time you drive in your car, you go forward in time a tiny bit. Every time you put a atomic clock on a satellite, it's going forward in time. Backwards, big problems, little China. Not clear ever going to be possible, but it causes some serious paradoxes. So just backwards, tricky.
Yeah, Katerina just shared the one of the articles we wanted to share. Thank you, Katerina. The BBC article that says plants talk to each other using an internet of fungus, which is one of the best articles I've read in many years, and about mycelium and how it connects plants, and they have their own internet that they communicate with. And that to that point, we talked yesterday about the incredible new technology of kind of bioengineering, of making materials using fermentation as an alternative to making things out of plastics. You can now make things out of biomaterials that are obviously have a much less negative impact on the planet and are actually superior in many use cases. And this is an incredibly new, exploding new industry. It's very new, but it has incredible potential. And so it's as
Tyler.
crazy as it sounds to talk about plants and the Internet of Plants. It isn't that crazy when you start talking about making things the same way nature is making things, in a far more intelligent ways than humans do. And you start to realize, humans make things in a very incredibly unintelligent way compared to how nature make things. If you realize that plants are self-replicating, solar-powered, edible robots, of a sense that so
with auto tuning
Tyler.
antennas.
yeah,
Tyler,
imagine if
it's
Apple made an apple, how transformative of a technology that would be. It's a new edible device that self-replicates, that is solar powered, and it blows your mind when you start thinking of nature as a technology company. Yes, I may.
Oh, sorry, Tyler. There was something, having worked in the fashion industry for so long, you, and we're on the topic of mushrooms. And I actually brew my own kombucha. And they've been using old scobies. Old scobies could be used to make leather. Like old kombucha scobies are being used to make leather, a leather-like substance that could be used for clothing. So it's super fascinating. You're absolutely correct. There's so many other materials that we can use. I do agree with the plants. I think the plants are looking at us like, when are you guys going to catch up to us?
Well,
Because I,
I'm
what was
sorry,
the,
this is the
Tyler.
what
other
was that?
thing, Amy. This is
Hey again.
Gabby. This is
Hey,
why I
Gabby.
challenge those that think about climate change. Because Tyler is right. The thing about humans is we continue to evolve. We should never move off fear. That's where we sidestep. When you move off fear, you make quick, time sensitive decisions, but they're not necessarily always the best decisions.
Agreed.
Uh, for those of you who remember the Japanese earthquake about 10 years ago, there were a lot of people that mentioned that there was a lot of odor, special odor coming from flowers and trees just before that earthquake happened. And I can't remember where I saw the information, but this was online just after the earthquake. People were reporting that they had some. They could smell some senses from plants and trees and stuff
Jeff,
like that during that time.
Jeff, Tyler, you're going to remember this one because you're where you are. During the tsunami, that big, massive tsunami that hit, the
Mm,
animals themselves were going upland
All right.
hours
Fun.
yeah.
before that tsunami hit.
Yeah, I may
Yep.
funny you say that. That was 60 Minutes, by the way. Not only do I remember it, I know the source because that struck me so
Yeah,
hard because
but it,
I got into a huge
yeah, sorry,
debate
go
with somebody at that time, which is that animals, hours before the Thai tsunami, started running for high ground, and the tourists were like, "What
correct.
the fuck is going on?" And there was,
Mm,
yeah, the animal. But it's well. By the way, it's also been recorded at the Pompeii volcano. It was recorded that the animals were freaking out hours before the eruption of Pompeii, which destroyed the whole city of Pompeii. If you've ever been there, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's well observed that historically that animals clearly have some sense of Mother
well,
Nature's
But
rumblings
this also goes
hours
back.
before.
This goes
you,
back. Sorry, this also goes back to what Gabby's saying. The if I could take that what Gabby was saying a little bit further, animals are sentient beings as well. And I believe that animals could have bigger and more senses than us as humans. I also do agree with your experience, Tyler, because I have a lot of Dutch that have experienced similar experiences. And also my friends that have done ayahuasca. So this is something very interesting because it's almost like the human is a condition where we get so clouded by this illusion of what we see here that we're forgetting, as Gabby mentioned, that we're part of this greater ecosystem. But if we start to act individual as we don't belong to it, then that is in fact where we will see probably some crazy shit going down.
Well, there's
I
well,
mean, in
there's a
case you
lot.
guys don't know this, I just want to leave y'all with this. I was a child prodigy. I don't just get on this stage to disrupt. Like, I will tell you my full first name and last name so you can look me up.
There, to tie it back to tech for a second, it's actually, I mean, for those outside of Silicon Valley, it's worth noting at this moment that the core of Silicon Valley and part of the reason that innovation happened in that area primarily was because there was silicon in the ground that HP, Hewlett Packard, and Intel used that silicon. However, the kind of experimentation that is known and is such an integral part of tech innovation in the Bay Area and the Steve Jobs era and um, the psychedelic element of Silicon Valley between the Google founders, by the way, very notably, and I don't want to name names, but it's part of the fabric of Silicon Valley is a bit of this psychedelia, in fact, and even especially the real geeky engineers like Danny Hillis, who created the RAID architecture that enables the computer systems that the cloud infrastructure that everything operates on today. But it's all very interesting, and the conversations that I've had with the most high profile people in Silicon Valley at dinners almost always come back to these conversations that we're having right now around psychedelics and the messages.
They're trans like
At I was yesterday. I did a room through the Quantum Photonics Hub with Ronald Cirquel, and next week we will have Miguel Nicolelis. Ronald Cirquel was one of the Blue Brain projects, like the Human Brain Project's beginners. He stepped away from it though, and Miguel Nicolelis the same way, because they say the further we move away from perceiving nature, the more we are reducing our intelligence and our brain ability to pick up signals, because how we perceive ourselves becomes the reality. For example, from Oliver Sacks, there were these patients, they made this patient see again. But because the environment we're so used to have that patient being blind, they continuously treated him like a blind person, or these patients, and they became blind again. They were physically able to see, but because their self-perception and the perception from the environment was that they are blind, they became blind again. The other thing Miguel Nicolelis did was this very famous exoskeleton show during the FIFA World Soccer Championship in Brazil, where he made basically this paralyzed person walk again with the exoskeleton. What additionally happens was that they can't really explain is that when you're paralyzed, the problem is not just the movement of the skeleton muscles themselves, but also the digestive system and all this homeostasis system stop working also. And these improved, but they were not trained at all. But the self-perception, because the patients were always looking into the mirror while walking and behaving normally, the self-perception changes what you can actually perceive. So all that matters is actually what your brain makes up as a reality. And they wrote this book, Relativistic Brain, which is really important. So basically they say through changing our environment to a mechanistic world and 0-1 binary world, we basically keep I'm using a stronger word, amputating our abilities more and more. And it's a very interesting book. And if you have time next Saturday, Miguel Nicolelis, he is one of the best neuroscientists in the world, will be in the quantum photonics room next Saturday.
Katerina, could you post that book? Could you post the title of
Yeah.
that book?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. And they say
It's
emotions is
Amy. Sorry.
basically the less fragmented perception we can have, because language is already very fragmented and abstracted, so it's not close to actual reality and what we would be able to perceive. We basically already, through starting to use language, we reduce our abilities to perceive. And yep, it's very interesting. And they are very concerned about the intelligence in humans being reduced more and more by being focused on only a few very specific abilities due to more and more technology taking over.
We do, though, also have to accept that our brains are wonderful at creating things. And, case in point, yesterday, Google self-driving bicycle, clearly bollocks, right? And then, find the source. And then, animals run up hills before an earthquake. Maybe, but maybe animals run up hills regularly, and then the earthquake happens, and we make that connection.
Nobody said anything about
It's
earthquakes, Ben. I talked about a tsunami and a volcano.
a tsunami, yeah, as in an earthquake under the sea. I mean, that's what I mean by a tsunami.
No, not at
But
all.
Okay, well, I mean, earthquake, different topic maybe, but the thing is, I do find that we like to come up with explanations for things that are a little bit exotic when the world is fascinating enough as it is, and we just don't necessarily need magic when there's so much magic already. That's all I would say. The world's so
There's no magic
fascinating. There's so
needed at
much to
all, Ben.
learn.
There's videos of the animals running to high ground on video. I don't need magic.
Yeah, sure, but when
Ben,
yeah,
you're just doing
and then
pattern recognition based on your past experience, but our journey of discovery is not that things don't exist, it's just that you have not experienced or discovered it yet. You just have to continue to discover new things.
Yeah, Ben,
oh
don't
yeah,
be
yeah,
afraid to
quite possibly.
change either. Don't be afraid to
Yeah, yeah,
change.
no,
It's coming.
not
It's
at all.
inevitable. And
Not
diversity,
There's a
brother.
lot of there's a lot of people who also say that they can predict earthquakes, and I'm to the opinion that I believe it. I think some people do have the ability to do that.
Tyler,
Why don't we use them for earthquake detection then? I
was
mean,
I'm
because
that
not.
it's such
No
an
one's
important,
talking about
or tsunami
earthquakes, Ben. We're
detection.
talking about a tsunami
no,
and a
actually,
I
volcano.
say
could
or
I just
tsunamis
hey,
then.
could I
Why
just
don't we
share?
use animals for detection? Because it's so important to be to get the humans away from the coast. I mean, we should. If they can predict it, let's use them because
I
it could
don't think
save
it's
so many lives.
prediction. I don't
Or
I agree.
detection.
Yeah,
But
I
if
think
they're
what
running away an hour or two earlier than the humans, why don't we make a startup that somehow detects that in animals so that we can run away from the coast in response to the animals running away to save human lives? That'd be awesome.
Ben,
The primitive people did that.
Because
that's such an
we have
interesting.
sensors we can put in the ocean to measure the ocean
You
rising of
see,
a tsunami.
yeah, like Tyler, I think the part of it that
There's
is
better
unique here
solutions
that I
as the
didn't get.
answer to your question, Ben.
Yeah,
By
I
the way, speaking of technology and earthquakes, I know I keep saying that earthquakes is not the subject, but a very long time ago, something years ago, when I was working at my first startup company, one of the employees was still getting his PhD from Stanford, and they were studying very low frequency radio waves for the purposes of submarine communication. This was really like zero point 0.1 hertz. It was very low frequency. And they buried some antennas in the ground, both in California and the East Coast. And the California antenna happened to be buried right near where the big earthquake happened in '89. And when that happened, it took the power out on the test system. But when they finally got up there to see it, they saw signals coming way before the earthquake. That when you looked at the data, you just couldn't assume anything else except that yes, this was definitely a precursor. And there were some reasons, and they wrote up academic papers and they recreated this thing. It never became a useful way of detecting earthquakes because there was so much noise, like the BART trains, which were like really far away, would be detected from this thing. And so you'd want to put it near a city to help protect the city, but the noise levels would be very, very high. But there were some things that were scientifically, measured way ahead of an earthquake, which was explained, by the way, as being the beginning of like water rushing underground. And just like you can't hear sounds out on the other side of a wall unless they're very bass sounds, you don't hear the higher frequencies through the wall. Well, this is super, super bass sounds, basically, that they felt were being transmitted changes underground that we wouldn't detect otherwise. And it was very interesting little episode, and I can't remember. I think CNN came to interview him at the office and things like that after this happened. But it never really, as far as I heard later, never really led to some really useful predictive capability. Anyway, little side note there.
Can I add here? So when I was younger, I did a experiment, the effect of electromagnetic radiation on Drosophila. And so that's basically the effect of radiation on fruit flies, the flies that come in and out of our house. What I used to do I was probably 15 at the time, maybe younger when I did this experiment,
And back then, the thought was that cell phones had so much radiation that they would cause these deformations like cancer and such like that in humans. And the science I used that took me to that experiment was actually based out of Germany, where there was these families around this big power plant that was giving off a bunch of radiation. And the mothers that were having babies with certain birth defects. And so I decided, to use my prototype as a fly. And so when I started seeing the theories of 5G and how it was getting people to think that 5G was here I was like, wow. So you have to pay attention to the media. That's where I want to start with this. And you also have to pay attention to the federal government. They use animals when they want to. For example, when you take a flight, they use dogs to sniff for drugs. Is it exactly accurate? No, they choose when they want to use animals. And I'm done speaking.
Gabby, what sort of wavelength was that radiation you were exposing that radiation exposing the flies to?
It varied. I have to look. I still have the files, but it varied. Some were exposed to stronger wavelengths, and some were exposed to little. And I had a control case.
So we have now gone 10 minutes over. The Clubhouse Town Hall meeting, which is many people are DMing me, as now underway. So we will meet you over there. I like listening to that myself. But thank you for joining us for the unscripted, unscheduled Sunday free flow jam
Thank you
session.
for doing it,
Yeah.
Tyler. And thank you for
Thank
opening
you. It
up.
was great.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Tyler,
you.
Thanks,
for taking your
everyone.
time out on Sunday.
No
Thank you.
worries.
Yeah, thanks for doing
We'll
that.
see you
Thanks,
Monday.
Sheila. Thanks,
I'll
Gabby.
see you over at the town hall.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Tyler.
Alrighty.
Yeah,
Take care.
take care.
Have
Thank
a great
you.